Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're situated on this great, big, beautiful blue globe floating through the void of Yah's creation. TGIF, it's Friday, the 12th of June, 2026. And, are you still trying to sort out what's real and what isn't in this clown world and propagandized media? Me too. All right, welcome to the Friday edition of the WTF Reports. I'm your host, Dave vonKleist. And I apologized. I don't know what happened yesterday, but I was having some internet problems and got connected to the network, and then it automatically disconnected me. And I said, wait a second, I've got to be on the air in 5 seconds. Connect. Connected. Disconnect. Oh, no. Connect. Disconnect. Oh, dear. And now I know that the replay is already kicked in there. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I finally got some of the problem figured out, but by that time we were already 10 minutes into the replay, so I figured, okay, I'm just going to let the replay go. So for those of you who are waiting for the Thursday show, sorry, it didn't happen. So, but anyway, I appeared to be live and happening on Friday, so here we go. Okay, let's see, where do we start? Well, I have a propensity for thinking outside the cage, and I apologize for those of you who see that as conspiracy theorizing, but so be it. And the reason is I'm thinking outside of this cage in regard to this Apache helicopter that got shot down. Now, it seems to me that every time Iran has taken some sort of offensive move, whether it be bombing Tel Aviv or taking out one of our battleships or aircraft carriers or hitting our radar or whatever what's going on in the Middle East in this war with Iran, every time they take some sort of offensive action, they're making videos, Lego videos. I'm sure you folks that have been staying online and paying attention, you know what I'm talking about. They're putting out one Lego video after another, and every time they do something, they make a video about it. Well, I found it rather interesting that with the downing of this Apache helicopter, which, by the way, I'm sure most of you know, is one of the most sophisticated machines of war ever developed and has all kinds of tech and defensive stuff on board, etc., etc. We've been told over and over again by Trump and Hegseth that we have decimated their military. Yeah, they don't have a Navy anymore. They have a very limited missile capability, and we've hit them here and we've hit them there, and they're on the ropes, and we're knocking them dead. So, if that's true, and Iran doesn't have the capability to take down one of the most sophisticated machines of war ever developed, well, like I said, the Apache helicopter goes down, and Iran did not make a video about it. As a matter of fact, they came back and said, we didn't do that. And meanwhile, Trump was saying that this was on Thursday. We're scheduled. We're going to go in there and bomb the snake snot out of them. It's coming. It's coming. And then Iran said, excuse me, we didn't do that. Oh. And all of a sudden, Trump, big headlines all over the news, Trump delays or cancels his bombing campaign. Maybe, just maybe, somebody else shot down that Apache helicopter. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Trump did not follow through with his campaign to bomb them into oblivion. Maybe, just maybe, he took a look and said, excuse me, who shot down that Apache helicopter? And I think if we all think outside of the cage, we all know who the most likely candidate is to carry off that type of an attack. So just maybe some a little sprinkle of doubt has come into the mind of President Trump. I would hope so. I would really, really strongly hope so. But, I'm sitting here thinking about this whole thing with the Apache helicopter. The whole story does not make sense. Does not make sense. Of course, there are too many people out there that basically, watch the alphabet news networks, and they don't question anything, nothing they don't think at all about anything. They just watch it, and their mouth is dropped open, and they just go about their business. I mean, how do we get people to start thinking outside the cage? I don't know. So I just wanted to throw that 2 cents in there. If I'm out to lunch, if I'm stupid, if I'm crazy, please tell me. The phone lines are open, and it's Open Line Friday. You want to call in, you're welcome to do so. 215-867-8255. That's 215-TOP-TALK, if you want to do the letters on that. Okay, let's see. What else? Let me see here. Oh, I want to get back to this issue before I move into some new stuff. This issue about Section 224 of the NDAA, I covered that a couple days ago. But the other thing people are talking about is Section 622. Now, I had a heck of a time trying to figure out where I can find the text of this particular bill. But that's because, folks, if you want to find what they're talking about in Section 622, it's in Senate Bill 4615. If you go through the NDAA like I did, I could not find it. I couldn't find Section 622. So I searched and then finally come to find out it's in the Senate bill. So it's SB 4615, Section 622. And I printed out the applicable pages here. And I want to share with you. And by the way, Senator Tom Cotton was the one who brought this up. As a matter of fact, let me see. I've got a file here for APAC. All of the APAC recipients, shall we say? And let me see. I'm going to open up the folder here. It says APAC. And let's see, I'll go look at all the people that have received money from APAC. Yeah, let's see here. Tom Cotton. How much money has Tom Cotton gotten? Let's see here. And this is as of about 6 months ago. Tom Cotton has received $1,197,827 from APAC. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Not that would have anything to do with his decision-making capabilities or, his judgment. No, I don't. That probably wouldn't have anything to do with it. But I just thought we might want to throw that in there. But anyway, so he's almost $1.2 million from APAC, and he was the one who created this Section 622. Let me share it with you here. It's called the United States-Israel Intelligence Sharing Enhancement. A, Statement of Policy. It is the policy of the United States, 1, to maintain and strengthen the strategic security partnership with Israel as a means of advancing the national defense of the United States, regional stability, and the protection of the United States personnel and interests in the Middle East. 2, to enhance intelligence collaboration through robust intelligence sharing and analytic partnership with Israel to counter terrorism, proliferation networks, cyber threats, state and non-state aggressors, terror financing, sanctions, evasion, and other transnational security challenges that threaten both Israel and the United States. 3, to deter and counter destabilizing activities by the governments of Iran and Iran-aligned state and non-state actors that threaten Israel, United States forces, and regional partners. 4, to ensure that security assistance and defense cooperation are structured to help Israel maintain its qualitative military edge consistent with United States law and broader regional security considerations. Let me see here. I'm going to go through here. Okay, I'll keep going. Number 5, to encourage and support the expansion of regional security architectures that include Israel and willing regional partners with a focus on integrated air and missile defense, maritime security, early warning systems, and intelligence sharing frameworks. And 6, to leverage security coordination with Israel to enhance force protection, early warning, and crisis response capabilities for United States military and diplomatic personnel in the region. Okay, then we get into Section B, the sense of Congress. It is the sense of Congress that, 1, Israel remains a critical United States security partner whose defense and intelligence capabilities provide a strategic advantage that contributes to enhanced operational effectiveness and technological superiority. 2, timely and actionable intelligence sharing between the United States and Israel has saved the United States personnel and property in the region and should remain a central pillar of the bilateral security relationship. Number 3, the evolving threat environment in the Middle East, including missile proliferation, unmanned systems, cyber operations, terror financing, and proxy warfare, requires sustained and adaptive cooperation between the United States and Israel. Anyway, I'm going to just skip the rest of this here because you get the general idea. This is basically marrying the United States with Israel. Again, how is this patriotic? How is this not treason? And by the way, I want to remind you that Israel forbids any dual citizenship in their government. Let that settle in. No, they don't want anybody in their government and anybody in any decision-making capacity to have an allegiance to a foreign country. But here in the United States, dual citizenship, hey, go for it. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, so many others have dual citizenship. And I have to remind everybody that you cannot serve two masters. So we have wholesale treason happening right in front of everybody's face. Right in front of your face. So it's not just Section 224 of the NDAA. It's also Section 622 of Senate Bill 4615. But, hey, NBA playoff game is tonight. Hey, did you see that wacky ending the other night? Oh, boy, yeah, Stanley Cup. Oh, boy, yippity-yay, yippee-I-O. That's where we're at. So just thought I'd throw that out there. So, and let me see, what else here? Oh, gosh, I got my notes here. By the way, remember, what was it? 9, 10 months ago, 11 months ago or something? Senator, was it? Not Ron Johnson. Tim Burchett, yeah. Tim Burchett from Tennessee. Remember he was talking about the $40 million that go to the Taliban every week. Every single week, the United States taxpayers are sending $40 billion to the Taliban. And that was months and months and months and months ago that he brought that to the sunlight. And you know what, folks? It's still going on. It hasn't stopped. $40 billion a week. A week. $40 billion a week going to the Taliban. Okie dokie. And America sits on their butt. What's it going to take to get people? You got to get pissed off. You got to be like Howard Beale. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. So what the heck happened? What the heck happened? I don't know. There was one guy, he lost it. He's just screaming about this Epstein stuff, and I don't blame him. Trump is in there, ain't no doubt about it. But anyway, this guy lost his cookies, and I'm going to play it. He went off on a rant, and he's trying to tell everybody, what's it going to take to get you to wake the hell up? What's it going to take for the American people to get off their big, fat butts and roll up their sleeves and get involved? The tree of liberty must occasionally be nourished with the blood of patriots and tyrants. That's what Thomas Jefferson said, but no, I don't want to stick out in the crowd. No. Anyway, I'm going to let this guy rant. Listen up.
Now we're just openly admitting to war crimes. We have our Secretary of Defense war just saying, yeah, we don't care. We're the terrorists. We are blowing up reservoirs in Iran. Innocent people who may well not support the regime, the very regime Trump before the war said was so horrible. Oh, he wants to free the people. Now he was going to make those people starve to death, die from dehydration. He is blowing up children's water supplies. Yeah, the same guy who's in the Epstein files. Yeah, the same guy who's using the United States government, the DOJ, the FBI, the Supreme Court to hide his involvement with Epstein. So I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise. What surprises me is the apathy in America.
Yeah.
We are becoming the worst thing in human history.
We are.
Where is the rage? We are bombing innocent people. The President of the United States was explicitly documented involvement with a child sex trafficking ring. What will it take to wake up?
What will it take to wake people up? I mean, I don't know. They shake you, grab you by the shoulders and shake you till your eyeballs rattle. I don't know. And the sad thing is, anybody like this gentleman here that's screaming from the top of his lungs, and yours truly has been screaming about this crap for, what, over 3 decades? You see, we're the ones that are looked at, with disdain. How dare you? Oh, you hate your government. Oh, this, oh, that. I'm so sick of it. I am just so sick of it. It just goes on and on. It doesn't stop. And I refer to the movie Network. If you hadn't seen it, folks, you really need to see it. The dialogue in that movie was absolutely phenomenal. 50 years ago, that movie came out. And if it hadn't been for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the Network would have won the Academy Award. And I think it should have anyway. But I mean, the dialogue in that film is absolutely mind-boggling, so far ahead of its time. If you haven't seen Network, make a point to get it and watch that and listen carefully to what's being said. And yes, it's dated. Yes, I know, it's a half a century old. But nothing's changed. It's all the same crap over and over and over again. Anyway, I understand. I sympathize with that gentleman's rage. It's not like he doesn't have good reason. Now, let's see what's going on. Oh, yeah, Senator Ron Johnson, he's been really PO'd, and I don't blame him. He was... let me cue that up here. Okay. Yeah, he was coming out of one of the offices there, and there was a CNN reporter who wanted to talk to him. But there was somebody else that brought up another issue that I think was probably a little bit more important. And that has to do, of course, with the hokey-pokey thingy-dingy and all the revelations that have come out about the mRNA technology, et cetera, et cetera. And here it is, and I want to remind you, of course, Pfizer is headed up by Albert Bourla. And I don't need to tell you what ethnic group he is associated with. But we all know now that Pfizer had tried to hide documents for 75 years. And once those documents got out there, all hell broke loose. And now we're finding out that, yes, there are millions. They're saying anywhere between 17 and 21 million people dead as a direct result of the hokey-pokey thingy-dingy. And tens of millions who are having adverse reactions. And all of that stuff was buried. Anyway, I'm going to let him talk for a second, and I'm going to follow up with the other side of that story.
Senator Johnson, can we get you on the COVID cover-up? So why do you think legacy media such as CNN's not covering this?
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Now, I don't know who that reporter is, but she asked, why isn't CNN covering it? Now he turns to his right because there's a CNN reporter right there. So he asked them,
why aren't you covering that?
I want to ask you about Iran.
Why aren't you covering that? And he says, I'll ask you about Iran. Can't seem to follow a thread of conversation. Go ahead.
Iran. You really ought to cover the fact that Peter Marks knew on March 1st of 2021 that their algorithms were hiding safety signals. On 26 days later, found out 25 serious adverse events like sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different types of strokes, and they buried it. They hid it. It's a major scandal. It's even as big a scandal that the major media is completely ignoring the story. It's been out now for almost 6 weeks.
Can I ask you about Iran? I'm sure that was your question.
he says, can I ask you about Iran? He doesn't want to talk about that.
ambush me. But I want to ask you about
ambush you?
No, her. So asking about Iran.
Do you think we could see people suing the U.S. government over this COVID cover-up?
It's hard to say. I mean, the government really does a good job of protecting itself and people that carry out its mission. So, the legal ramifications for what harm these government officials did by not informing the American public, not giving them the information they had the right and had deserved to hear. I'm not sure what that is. My job right now is to expose it. I appreciate Secretary Kennedy's commitment to radical transparency. That's why we know about this. We have a lot more documents, a lot more people to interview. So stay tuned. Again, biggest scandal of my lifetime because people weren't warned, they were mandated to take the shot, or they were coerced, or they're convinced without the kind of information they should have had for informed consent. And millions suffered adverse events. At least tens of thousands died after that March 1st date.
Yeah. I just found it interesting that CNN not once but twice tried to grab the steering wheel, and because they don't want to talk about the Pfizer and about the mRNA and about the hokey pokey thingy dingy. No, they don't want to talk about that. Why? Why wouldn't they want to talk about that? Well, when they take a commercial break, make note of the commercials, and that will answer your question. Because over half of their advertising revenue comes from big pharma. That's why they will never go after the pharmaceutical companies. Anyway, doubling back, I meant to finish up. I was talking about the Senate Bill 4615. And again, if you're looking for that Section 622 that people have been talking about, yeah, it's not just the 224. It's also the 622. But that's not in the NDAA. It's in the Senate Bill 4615. But anyway, here's a little bit of a conversation about Section 622. Okay, let's get this queued up, and off we go.
To before we knew any of this nonsense was happening. Let's put C1 up here.
Okay, by the way, the person being interviewed is Brandon Weichart. Okay, here he is.
You did such a good job of breaking down the NDAA's attempt to further link the United States military and the Israeli military. There's been an update to that the Senate also wants to force the United States to share sensitive intel with Israel. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, and I broke that, I actually did a separate post on 622, which is Intelligence Authorization Act. And actually, I think because I read Pillar's piece last night, the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering if the NDAA thing was kind of a weird feint, because the really important thing for Israel is the intelligence access. Yeah, they want the technology and whatnot. That's an added benefit. But Israel needs access to our intel. And the one thing I know from talking to guys like Dr. Michael Scheuer, talking to John Kiriakou, talking to a bunch of people, former CIA hands, is the CIA is very serious about playing keep away. John Ratcliffe, the director, is not, but the permanent kind of bureaucrats in CIA, the lifers, are very committed to keeping a lot of the intel they collect away from Israel, because Israel will turn around and use that intel to disrupt our operations in order for them to gain some kind of leverage elsewhere. We saw this with Jonathan Pollard. But I think that 622 of the Intel Authorization Act, that already went through the Senate. That May 20 understanding is it got out of the Senate, so now it's waiting for the next phases of the legislation process. But nobody really paid. Everybody was talking about the NDAA, which is why I went back, and I see that Paul Pillar went back and was like, wait a second. The bigger issue here is if you fuse, which is what this calls for, the intelligence sharing. So it's basically elevating the Mossad and Israeli intelligence services from what's known as a transactional partner, where it's limited and finite what we give them because we recognize that they're an espionage threat, and you elevate them to a trusted partner on the level of the Five Eyes. So that's UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And they basically become like one of the members of the Anglosphere. Now, I have my own problems with Five Eyes going back to Russiagate, but ultimately, the fact is, I trust the British more than I trust the Israelis when it comes to intel sharing. I trust the Canadians more than, the Israelis. And we now have that DIA report claiming that they are a critical counterintelligence threat, which puts them on the same level as Russian and Chinese intelligence services. And this act by the Senate, if it goes through all the way, and I think it might, because nobody's talking about it except me and you and a couple other people, if this thing goes through, Israeli intelligence is now, it's open kimono for the Israeli intelligence. They don't have to ask anymore. They just gain access.
Crazy to think about, and ties the hands of a future, the current executive branch probably doesn't have any problem with this, but ties the hand of any future, because you see the reckoning that's happening with the American public. So talk about why this is happening now.
Whoever invented this deserves a raise. I can't believe it's already 2025 and people are still using those old, disgusting sync plugs. Come on, those things should have been in the trash years ago. It's time to upgrade. And this little gadget completely changes the game. Just press down and done. Installs with no tools, no plumber, no...
Yeah, and I mentioned that in my essay too, which is that
commercial there.
Another thing, because it becomes an act of Congress. Right now, it's an executive agreement, a series of executive agreements between the United States and the Israelis. So if a president wants to say, turn off the spigot a little bit more in intel sharing with Israel because of how much of a prevalent counterintelligence threat it is, they could do that, no muss, no fuss, and the Israelis just have to put up with it until the next president comes in. This Senate Intelligence Authorization Act for next year, if it passes, that takes that capability out of the president's hand, whoever the president is. So you bring up the young people on the left, very much no longer pro-Israel. The young people on the right are very skeptical of Israel now. There's a bipartisan growing consensus that we need to distance from Israel and rethink the alliance. And the Israelis are savvy enough to detect that, and they know that it's the young people, the next generation, that's saying this. So they're trying to lock in as much of their alliance with the United States, the 20-year memorandum of understanding for aid. They're trying to do the NDAA, where they have permanent access to the to the defense base. And now with this, basically the next president, if it's a Democrat especially, because we know the Democrats do not want to have any real ties with Israel, except maybe, Nancy Pelosi's generation. But if it's a Democrat that takes power, that Democrat president now is not going to have the same freedom of action that the previous presidents had to say, you know what, Israel, I don't like what you're doing here. We're going to turn that spigot of intel sharing off. It was now going to be open kimono all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a good point, because let's face it right now, the Republicans have they're turning, on Trump and this entire direction, because Trump has completely turned. So what happens in the midterms? What happens if the Democrats do get control and they've already passed Senate Bill 4615 and the NDAA? Once Israel has gotten its claws into our Pentagon and into our military and into the intelligence infrastructure, it's going to be next to impossible to get them out. So we are at a crossroads in this country. We really are. And America has got to wake the F up. 63% now, I saw recent polls, 63% of Americans do not support Israel anymore. As a matter of fact, Dave Smith was talking, and let me see, he was talking to Natalie Morris. Clayton Morris's wife. He does, Clayton Morris and Natalie Morris do a show called Redacted. And they're doing some really good work. And anyway, so Natalie Morris was talking to Dave Smith.
Has decided that domestic terrorism is a thing, and that people who advocate overthrow of the government are terrorists. That's terrifying. This is all Big Brother stuff. There's no such thing as domestic terrorists. What do we do about that?
Isn't it something, right, just in the United States of America, our founding document is the Declaration of Independence. It's the most beautiful document ever, because it says, the opening doesn't even make an argument. It just says it's self-evident that there's a God and that he wants us to be free.
Right. I'm going to pause it and I will share it. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights or certain unalienable rights. Okay, so we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Oh, well, what about Jewish supremacy? I mean, after all, they keep screaming that they are God's chosen people, which indicates that if you're not one of them, you are not one of God's chosen people. Isn't that Jewish supremacy? How come we don't hear about that? How come we don't hear about that?
Which I love. I love not even pretending that needs to be argued. We take it as self-evident that God wants us to be free. And governments, they're just this institution that man creates to protect our freedom. And if they're not protecting our freedom, or if they're tyrannical, then we have the right and the duty to overthrow that government and replace it with a new one. So the idea that the government that was created by that document could then ever try to say that, like, the overthrowing your own government is some type of, like, a moral sin on its face by definition is crazy. That was the whole spirit of the country, is that you overthrow a tyrannical government.
I hear the same thing. I jokingly say when I return home from Washington each week, a wife greets me at the door, not with a hug or a kiss, but why the hell is Anthony Fauci not in jail yet?
Okay, I'm pausing that because they just switched over. Now Clayton Morris is talking to Thomas Massey.
We're frustrated, but they have to understand, I don't control the judicial system.
You were not allowed to deviate from the talking points. I experienced that.
Right.
Like, for real.
And now Tucker Carlson.
And just nod along and be like, okay.
If you think about how ridiculous that is, I had to read Mein Kampf in college. Right? We still read Hitler's words to understand the move towards a final solution, understanding blood, all of that.
So, a lot of people are indeed waking up. But like I said, we can have all of these posts and all of these podcasters out there screaming from the rooftops. But if most of Americans have got their heads basically wrapped around the NBA and the NHL and, baseball, et cetera, and the new movie, of course, was it tonight? Yeah, the Disclosure film is coming out. Disclosure Day, to whatever it is, Steven Spielberg's new movie. But that's what people talk about. They're not talking about this stuff. So, again, how do we get out of this? How do we motivate people? How do we get them off of their butts? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break here.
Get More Tank will save you money every month on gas. Get More Tank is a tablet with active ingredients that adds big mileage to every tank. Made in America, the Get More Tank formula is used by trucking companies and heavy industry. Now the Get More Tank formula is available to you. Get More Tank works in any gas or diesel engine, cleans your engine, lowers emissions, and you'll feel improved engine performance every time you step on the gas. Get More Tank works for cars, trucks, boats, motorcycles, four-wheelers, mowers, and blowers. Hey, if you got an engine, then Get More Tank. Contractors, electricians, plumbers, painters, and lawn service companies, Get More Tank will save you money and extend the life of your engines. If you're an owner-operator running your big rig around the town or across the country, Get More Tank will save you money too. If you're a farmer, all of your equipment can use Get More Tank. A 5-pack on sale at GetMoreTank.com for just $22.22 plus shipping. Use the promo code REDPILL101 and get 10% off. Save your money, save your engine, save the earth at GetMoreTank.com. Get More Tank is EPA registered, doesn't void warranties, results vary.
And as always, you can get more Tank by visiting our website, TheWTFReports.com. Don't forget the WTFReports.com. And click on the sponsors page. It'll take you down to a window where you click on Get More Tank, and it'll tell you all about the specifications and details, how and why this fuel catalyst works. No, it will not have any negative effects on your engine. People say, I don't want to put that in there. I don't know what it's going to do. Well, go read the data. The data is very clear, because once you start using Get More Tank, the first thing that you're going to notice is you've got more power. When you hit the accelerator, you go. And that's number one. Number two, as your engine adjusts to this new efficient way of burning the fuel, you'll start to notice the engine is running more efficiently. It runs cleaner, which is good for the environment. But here's the moneymaker. After a couple of tanks, you'll start to see the improved mileage, anywhere between 15 and 20%, depending, of course, on your make, model, and year of vehicle and your driving habits. So, hey, check it out, folks. It doesn't make sense not to use it, especially with the price of fuel, and it doesn't look like it's going to go down. Yeah, Trump is saying, once this is over, we're going to see fuel prices drop. I hope so. But that's still no reason not to use Get More Tank. So go to our website, TheWTFReports.com. Click on the sponsors page and Get More Tank. Okay, it's 40 minutes past the hour. Wow, this hour is going by really quickly. Getting back to this issue about the hokey pokey thingy dingy and how all this information now has been coming out about all of the companies that manufacture the mRNA technology. There are thousands and thousands of physicians all over the world that are get together and say, we've got to stop this mRNA. This is insanity. We are screwing with the genome of our species. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. We are starting to see it. Of course, we're having all kinds of explosive, myocarditis and strokes and all kinds of, blood clots, et cetera, et cetera. And, oh, gosh, I don't know why this is happening. Well, why don't we start taking a look at the long-term effects of the mRNA technology? The bottom line here is we all know now that Pfizer and all the other main players in the distribution of the hokey pokey thingy dingy are up to their eyeballs in guilt. And yes, and I mentioned Albert Bourla, head of Pfizer. What happens? Well, last year, remember, Trump had his big luncheon, and Albert Bourla was there, Bill Gates was there, Sam Altman was there. I mean, all the movers and players and policymakers for the fraud of 2020 and 2021. They were all sitting at the table with Trump, and I'm saying, wait a second. Is this one of those exercises where, you hold your friends close and you hold your enemies closer? I don't know. But the bottom line here is we know, Albert Bourla has been named with the International Criminal Court. I mean, they've already pretty much found guilty Bill Gates. And anyway, the point is that Albert Bourla is not a good guy, and we all know that. So what happened? Here's Nick Holcher basically telling you about the latest business deal with Pfizer. Listen to this.
The CDC just gave $1.2 billion to Pfizer for 2026 to 2027.
Wow. $1.6 billion going to, Albert Bourla's Pfizer.
mRNA injections.
More mRNA.
Despite nobody even taking these anymore. Less than 10% of adults are still taking these. And what's most disturbing is you look at the pediatric COVID-19 vaccines. Look how much they gave. $735 million to purchase mRNA injections for little children. So that means they don't plan on pulling these out for the market. It looks like they're here to stay, given that they just shelled out over $1 billion for the updated dangerous, cardiotoxic, deadly, carcinogenic shots. About $500 million for the adult versions. This is a worrisome development. And now we have all the data showing that they covered up the safety signals. They covered up the sudden cardiac deaths, the strokes, the brain clots, the heart attacks, the cardiac arrests. And now they're giving Pfizer billions more.
And why do you suppose they're doing that? Well, I'll tell you. Because you people, well, not the listeners to this broadcast, but the overwhelming majority of Americans just don't care. They don't care about anything. It just goes right over their heads when you try to tell them about this stuff. You might as well be speaking a foreign language. I come across it all the time, and I feel so isolated. And I know most of you listeners out there feel the same way that I do. Excuse me. The point is that we're all aware of what's going on, and when you try to communicate that to the general population, they just give you the fluoride stare and move on and start talking about the movie they watched last night. They just don't get it. They don't realize that their children are at risk. And despite the fact that all this information has come out about the mRNA technology, and despite the fact that there are millions and millions of people all over the world that have been affected by this, and despite the fact that with all this information, they keep on doing it. They just keep on keeping on. And that's because most of Americans are just sitting on their butts. I don't know. Anyway, give me a phone call. Join the conversation. 215-867-8255. And maybe it's because there's just no accountability. That could be it. I mean, I've played many audio clips in the past months about people saying, hey, where are the arrests? How come there's no arrests? Marjorie Taylor Greene made an interesting statement, and she was asking the same doggone question. How come nobody has been arrested yet? Anyway, she was being interviewed on CNN, and she said the following.
I think what MAGA needs to realize and wake up and see very clearly is President Trump hasn't brought any accountability against any of the Democrats that he campaigned and went so hard against.
Yeah, remember?
None of the Democrats on the January 6th committee have been held accountable. No one has been prosecuted for the stolen election of 2020. No one has been held accountable for all the crimes against humanity, for COVID. No one has been held accountable for all of these issues. But he has targeted 4 Republicans harder than he has ever come against any Democrat, and that's myself, Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert. Why? Because we fought to release the Epstein files.
Yep.
And I think that is the story that people need to pay attention to, because that tells more truth about Donald Trump than it will ever tell you on Truth Social.
That's right. And it's not just Donald Trump. It's not just Trump. Yeah, Trump's in there. Yeah. And by the way, don't think for a New York minute that other countries don't have copies of these files. Copies that have been unredacted. I'm sure that the copies of the Anthony Weiner laptop have been sent all over the world. I'm sure that copies of the Hunter Biden laptop have been sent all over the world. And I'm convinced that, yeah, the Epstein files, unredacted in their completion, have been sent all over the world. But the problem is that there are so many people in very powerful positions, not just in this country, but all over the world, that are implicated. And maybe, just maybe, yeah, I say that with a semi-smile, maybe it's because almost every, I would say every, but I'll say almost every member of Congress and the Senate and members of the private sector, huge corporations, the media, Hollywood, you name it. I will bet your bippy that most of them are in those files. And that's why we just don't see it. Because, yes, it would take everything down, but maybe that's what has to happen. And Dave Smith was referring to the Declaration of Independence, and it says, where is it here? But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. That's in the Declaration of Independence, our first document of law. So yes, when people start talking about, hey, look, we got to clean up this country. We got to clean up our act. Well, guess what? Maybe that's exactly what has to happen. Maybe we have to, as they say, weed the garden. Because our founding fathers planted the seeds of liberty in the garden, and it was up to us to occasionally water and weed the garden. And we haven't done that. And now you see what you get. That's where we're at. And I'm sorry, I hate to be banging the drum here. I don't mean to be gloom and doom, but it's not like we weren't warned. We've been warned for decades and decades. But we got fat, dumb, and lazy. Because this is the greatest country in the world. And for a while it was. And there's some people say, oh, this country was never great. No, it was never perfect. But I'll tell you, I've traveled to certain corners of the world. I've been to South America. And I'll tell you, we got it pretty damn good here. And we've taken a lot for granted. And we've ended up resting on our laurels. And we sit on our butts and we watch the nightly news. And, of course, it's a world away. Nothing like that is happening here. So we're insulated from it. It's just an image on the television or on our devices or on our phone or something like that. Can't happen here. Can't happen here. You should pull up that old Frank Zappa tune. It can't happen here. Oh, man. But no, as a matter of fact, folks like myself have been screaming about this for a long, long, long time. And we're called crazy, or we're called idealists or utopianists or whatever. I mean, John Lennon screamed about this a half a century ago. Folks like, why can't we have world peace? Why can't we redirect all the billions, hundreds of billions, trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars have been spent blowing stuff up, killing people, rebuilding, blowing it up again, killing more people, rebuilding, blowing it up. And we've got companies out there with planned obsolescence. I was talking to a friend of mine who just bought a new refrigerator. And he said, it's funny because, the one that I had it was only about 10 years old and it broke down, so I had to get another one. Meanwhile, my grandmother has an old freezer in the basement that she's had for 70 years and it's still chugging along. Oh, but the new ones are more energy efficient. Bull crap. They've done tests on some of these appliances and they find that the old ones are just as efficient as the new ones. But they don't make new stuff to last very long. That's why they started pushing these extended warranties no matter what you buy. Well, you want to get an extended warranty? Because, if they got a 3-year warranty on them, that's 36 months? Doggone well that when you hit about 40 months, something's going to go on it. And it's planned to go that way. So they can fill up the landfill and sell you another one. This is what's happening to our resources. And if we would straighten that whole thing out, if we could stop spending all of our money and our efforts in blowing stuff up, killing people, rebuilding, blowing up, killing people, rebuilding, blowing up, my gosh, this would be a whole different world. Stephen Greer did a documentary film called The Lost Century. I highly recommend it. You'll find out that for over a century, technologies have been suppressed that would have solved a lot of the world's problems. As a matter of fact, John Lennon, like I said, he's, rest his soul, he was on to something. He wasn't perfect either, but he was on to something. And people called him crazy.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. And I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12 way down the line. But I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time. But now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, on what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane. But I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it.
Yeah, I remember after he was assassinated, somebody wrote a song called Crazy John. And I remember we were all mourning after he was assassinated. I listened to this song, and the punchline of the song is, hey, I want to be crazy too. Well, maybe you listeners out there, you're just as crazy as I am. But anyway, why do we get this way? Maybe it's because of our education. And George Carlin warned us about that. Yeah.
But there's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers.
Yep.
Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money.
Yeah.
They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club.
And you ain't in it.
You and I are not in the big club.
That's right. That's right. And it's been going on for a long time. Was it 20-odd years ago when I was doing the Power Hour with Joyce, and a lot of times we were traveling all over the country. At one point, we were up in New England, and we went up to the state of Maine and visited with Charlotte Iserby. Charlotte Iserby was with the Department of Education under Reagan, and she wrote a book entitled The Deliberate Dumbing of America. Or was it The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America? Something like that. But anyway, here's a quick clip from an interview that she did, and she's explaining why they want a dumb population.
Okay. You're saying they're brainwashing. Okay, you're saying these people that are experts in brainwashing is using the Department of Education to brainwash our children.
Yes.
What are they after? Why are they doing it?
Well, if you want to move a country from a free individualistic economy,
which we have.
Yes, or had.
Or had, okay.
To a planned economy, you have to do it through the schools. You have to dumb down and brainwash, change the attitudes and values. You have to completely, social engineering has to go on constantly. And many teachers know what I'm talking about. And people are going to say, well, when did this start? And who on earth ever did this? Why would a plan like that be allowed to be carried out?
That's right.
Well, then you have to go back to 1934, which I will do, and we have to go to the three-pronged fork, okay? So I do think that the watershed year, although you can go back to the early part of the century when the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation were deeply involved in education, and that it was decided then that Carnegie would deal with the international part and Rockefeller domestic. They commissioned the American Historical Association to put together a study of the social studies, and they came up with lots of volumes, but I have one little volume, Conclusions and Recommendations for the Social Studies. And basically that little one is an original book. I wish I'd brought it with me. Too bad. But I don't even dare let it out of the house. It's so important. It called for changing the United States through the schools from a free individualistic economy to a socialist, collectivized, planned economy in the New World Order.
It says that in the book?
Yes.
And that book was written when?
In 1934.
By who?
It was the Carnegie Corporation paid for it. The American Historical Association put it together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sirree, Bob. And, of course, we've all heard that Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, he was in charge, what was it, Pergamon Press and McGraw-Hill, who are the publishing companies that supply the textbooks for all of our public schools and universities. Very interesting indeed. Well, that's where we're at, folks. That's where we're at. Okay, that's going to bring it to a close. Another edition of the WTF Reports on this Friday afternoon. If you're listening on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook, as always, I ask respectfully that you click like, share, subscribe, and above all else, spread the word, because word of mouth is the best advertising. And if you like what's going on here, hey, support us by supporting our advertisers. Get More Tank, the Wave Watch, and we've also got some merch, baseball caps, T-shirts, coffee mugs. And if you don't want any of that, you just want to contribute, you can go to the GoFundMe page and make a contribution. We really appreciate that. All right, that said, the weekend is now upon us. So please, do the right thing. Pay it forward. So have a great weekend. So until next week, stay safe, stay free, and God willing, I'll see you Monday.